So once we address our psychological and emotional relationship with food, we will then understand that eating healthy is not a punishment. It's only a punishment if a person has unchecked trauma or unchecked biases that have been previously correlated with his or her relationship with food that are rooted primarily in psychology and emotions, right? And so, what's good, family? Welcome back, my inner wealth champions. You're checking with Ameer and Naseer. Before we get started with today's video, family, I wish you all inner wealth, which we know is the overall state of our holistic health. So, today's video, family, I want to have a discussion about why I personally use regimen instead of diet when I describe being plant-based, right? And so I'm going to first talk about how a plant-based regimen is really a lifestyle. It's a lifestyle. So this is one of the many reasons why I don't like the word diet. So a plant-based regimen, it's a lifestyle. So it's a way of living. So even outside of food consumption, right? It's a lifestyle, and even hygiene products that I use that are plant-based, even detergent on down to laundry and dishwashing liquid, plant-based. Again, I did mention hygiene, so mouthwash, using plant-based mouthwash, Clove mouthwash, right? And so I use regimen instead of diet because it truly is a lifestyle, and it filters over into all aspects of my life. Because even though I primarily started, again, my holistic health and wellness journey began with a specific branch of nutrition, it began to build out into all aspects of my life, into all dimensions of my health and wellness. And so I just wanted to emphasize one of the many reasons why I use regimen instead of diet is because a plant-based life, plant-based regimen, it is a way of life, and it's a lifestyle, and it shouldn't be necessarily rooted in being limited by this term diet. Which leads me to my next point, which is that a plant-based regimen is rooted in optimal health and abundant living, and it's not a restriction, right? So I strongly dislike when I hear others who may not be plant-based, or others who are describing the diet as, oh, what are your restrictions? Or they'll ask you, what are your dietary restrictions? You know, I've gone to conferences, I've gone to events and meetings where they ask for, you know, your preferred eating habits, but of course they use the word diet, and then beyond diet, you know, they'll use and ask what are your dietary restrictions. But that word restriction, I'm a huge, it's such a pet peeve for me, because there's this myth that someone who decides to adopt a plant-based lifestyle, and then with regards to food consumption, you know, eat plant-based whole foods, that somehow you're putting restrictions on how you eat, when it's actually the opposite. There's no restrictions. I'm actually opening myself up to many additional ways to consume food. By adopting a plant-based regimen, I am opening myself up to exploring the true benefit of food. So now I'm exploring more fruits, more vegetables, more legumes, nuts and seeds, and different varieties of these healthful foods, right? I'm exploring different recipes that incorporate these healthy foods. So it really opens up our world to more options with regards to plant-based foods, and it opens up our world to being on a path and journey of sustaining optimal health, which then has a direct correlation to abundant living. And so you see why I dislike the word restriction, because it assumes that because one, such as myself, does not eat flesh foods, And because I eat plant-based foods, and I'm limiting myself, when in fact the exact opposite is happening. I'm actually opening up myself to more options, creating a pathway to experience life more abundantly, and I am creating a pathway to explore more healthful varieties of these healthy plant-based foods. And so I just wanted to emphasize this point. It is not a restriction. It's not a restriction at all. And it's not a limitation. See, a limitation has this negative connotation. When prioritizing plant-based foods, it's positive, right? It's enhancing my health. It's prolonging my health. It's preserving my health. So as a result, I'm not restricting myself. I'm actually prolonging and preserving myself and my health and wellness. And so the irony in the phrase dietary restrictions being used with regard to those who adopt a plant-based regimen or eating habits is that it's not a restriction or limitation at all. All right? So I'm going to go on to my third point, which is plant-based regimen, or one who adopts a plant-based eating habit. This is literally a proactive and preventative approach to sustaining one's holistic health, and it's not a punishment. So oftentimes, with even a follow-up from the last point, so again, remember we talked about dietary restrictions, moving on to this point, sometimes it is viewed when one decides to primarily eat healthy foods that it's a punishment. It's not a punishment. So it's not a punishment. The root would then be of this ideology and intellectual paradigm, right, that we're addressing in this moment. The root that needs to be addressed is the psychological, emotional relationship with food. So that is the real root, right? So once we address our psychological and emotional relationship with food, we will then understand that eating healthy is not a punishment. It's only a punishment if a person has unchecked trauma or unchecked biases that have been previously correlated with his or her relationship with food that are rooted primarily in psychology and emotions, right? And so this is why, again, I say it's a lifestyle, because even outside of just adopting healthy eating habits, it is involving other aspects of our wellness, right? So it's involving the emotional health, the intellectual health, and the spiritual health, right? Those are also attached to the decision to eating healthy, attached to our physical health, right? And so if those aspects of our health are unchecked, the emotional and the psychological, then the root is not addressed. And when the root is not addressed, then you'll hear, and that's why we continue to hear this association between punishment and healthy eating. It's not a punishment. It's not a punishment at all. The decision to prioritize plant-based whole foods and eat healthy, again, it is a preventative and proactive approach to one's health, and is rooted in sustaining, our holistic health. It's not a punishment. So again, I want to emphasize with this point that eating healthy, and even in addition to eating healthy, all of the activities involved in adopting a plant-based lifestyle align well with the pursuit of sustaining one's holistic health, right? Because now we are adopting a preventative and proactive philosophy rather than reactive, rather than waiting until something is wrong, waiting until something is irreversible, waiting until something is at a late stage, waiting until something is incurable, waiting until something is beyond a accessible stage in its pathological development as a illness or disease related to nutrition, right? And so again, it's a philosophy and it's a lifestyle, and it is separate. It is not in alignment with punishment. The only reason why those two are sometimes associated, again, is because of the unchecked trauma with regards to one's emotional and psychological attachment to food. So then once that's addressed and we start to heal in that regard, then we understand that a plant-based lifestyle regimen, it's not equated to punishment. And honestly, this ties into the second point I made, even about it being a restriction, right? So again, just the psychological and emotional attachment to food that human beings, have, it may then lead to myths being promoted across the internet, myths being, conversed continuously about just in passing, with others when you're out, in society, interacting with other people. And so I just wanted to give, some 3 points about why I personally use regimen instead of diet, right? Because a plant-based regimen, while it's rooted in, again, adopting eating habits that are primarily associated with plant-based whole foods, remember, it's a lifestyle. So it's not only nutrition, but it's also organic products, plant-based products as well, that you may use for hygiene, that you may use around the house. And you may also, in addition to your plant-based eating habits, you incorporate physical, consistent exercise and fitness, right? You then also align these lifestyle activities with balancing your emotional and mental health. So you see how it then becomes a lifestyle, because you learn on the journey that there's each branch of health is not independent of another branch, right? They are all interdependent. They are all in alignment with each other, which then supports our holistic health, right? And then once our holistic health is sustained and supported, we then are able to achieve and experience optimal health, which is this dynamic balance between all of those different branches of wellness, right? And of our health, right? And so again, just to review the 3 points that I emphasized in today's video for why I use regimen rather than diet with regards to my plant-based lifestyle is: number 1, it is a lifestyle. Number 2, when you think about a plant-based regimen, it's important to understand that it's rooted in optimal health and abundant living, right? So it's not restrictive, right? And then the last point I emphasized in today's video was that when you think about a plant-based regimen, it's all rooted in a proactive and preventative approach to sustaining one's holistic health. All right, family? So I hope today's video you enjoyed it. I just wanted to offer some insight on why I personally use regimen instead of diet. And I hope you all continue to, stay tuned in and checked in with me. And until the next video, of course, I wish you all inner wealth, which we know is the overall state of our holistic health family. Peace.